It's time now for a review of what is making headlines in today's papers. So let's bring in Arise analyst Constance Ikwoku. Good morning.
Morning, Adeyeye. How is today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing very well and excited to see everyone. Charles and Yolanda, how are you guys?
Fine, thank you. Good morning, Constance.
Doing well, thank you.
Okay. Good to look at the papers with us this morning. We have Chuks Akunna. He is the Executive Director of Authority newspaper. Hello there and welcome to the program. We'll begin with this day. Supreme Court reserves ruling in 4 Rivers cases. Dismisses Fubara's appeal on budget. The court dismissed the appeal by Governor Sim Fubara against the judgment ordering him to represent the state's 2024 budget before the faction of the State Assembly led by Right Honorable Martin Amewule. Both the Federal High Court and Court of Appeal had in separate judgments faulted Fubara's presentation of the 2024 appropriation before a 5-member assembly led by Right Honorable Edison Ehi. We recall that Fubara presented that budget on grounds that the Amewule-led faction, having defected from the People's Democratic Party to the All Progressives Congress, ceased to be lawful members of the State Assembly. But the court held that he could not present the budget to 5 members when he did not present evidence that the 27 lawmakers defected from PDP to APC. A lot of stuff going on in Rivers State, long and winding court cases that distract elected officials from focusing on the job of governance. This is not what Rivers people definitely want to see, perpetually locked in legal battles. It's counterproductive, Chuks, isn't it?
Well, it depends on what side of the divide. For those who are benefiting, you have senior lawyers who are cashing out, from this agreement. And that said, it's interesting the way the Supreme Court dismissed the appeal yesterday. But then it was according to Rivers State government, it had become mere academic exercise because the suit was challenging the judgments by the Court of Appeal and the lower court on the impropriety of Governor Sim Fubara, spend and appropriating money, having the budget passed by 4 lawmakers. So what the state government said was that, well, as at 31st of December to 2024, that we are finished spending money for 2024 fiscal year. So whatever the Supreme Court was going to say about that was going to be irrelevant because, in their words, it had become mere academic exercise since the fiscal year had ended and went to 2025.
Well, it was 5 lawmakers, not 4, but I think the case will continue. There will be appeals and counter-appeals, so we'll see how that goes. Quickly, at the top front page of This Day again, we have that Elon Musk story where it says Elon Musk bids 97.4 billion naira, dollars, not naira, for control of OpenAI. The firm rejects the offer. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman instead tweeted that he will buy Twitter, now on X, for $9.7 billion if Musk wants. Ouch. So Musk is being told that he will not be allowed to control everything. Okay, let's move on to Daily Trust. Police retirement crisis festers. Top officers refuse to leave over IGP's tenure extension. Court to hear suit against Police Service Commission March 18. Exit honorably retired AIG counsels. Chuks, I would like you to, I would like to have your take on the story because it's very important. We know that the Police Service Commission had approved retirement of police officers above 60 years old or have spent 35 years in service. This is the public service rule. These are all age mates of the current Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetonkun, we are told, but the IGP himself will stay in office. And this is made possible by an amendment to the Police Act last year, which saw his tenure extended to 2027. Opinions are divided on this matter. The police is a very important institution, and in a time where we are security challenged, you do not want this crisis. But if his mates are retiring, people are asking, why shouldn't he retire?
Exactly, and that takes us back to what happened in 2007 when President Olusegun Obasanjo sought to amend the constitution to allow himself run for third term. And people like President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who at the time was the governor of Lagos State, and incidentally, Adeyeye Tokun was the CSO to Tinubu at the time. You know, they fought the third term, and then just last month, President Tinubu praised former Senate President Ken Namani for being a hero of democracy for stopping third term of Obasanjo. So what the president has done, or what the government has done to Egbe is actually tenure elongation, because you do not appoint somebody, you know, based on a certain law, and then in the middle of the game, you know, while that person is approaching, you know, the end of his tenure, then you now go to the National Assembly to amend the act. And it's a constitutional matter. It's not even a question of amending the Police Act. It's a constitutional matter, or they have to actually alter the constitution to actually allow not Egbe Tokun, because he cannot benefit. Laws do not take effect retroactively in Nigeria. So whenever the law is amended, it is for the next IG to enjoy that and not for Egbe Tokun. It raises serious moral and ethical issues. Even that's why people like Omoyele Sowore, you know, call the police IG an illegal IG.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to say something.
How do they say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, or what's good for the goose is good for Uganda? When you lower standards and when you allow impropriety enter a system because you're trying to make an exception, it makes sense that his age mates are then saying, well, if he is exceptional in that way, then why not we? And then that's why we have rot setting into so many systems and institutions in our government and in our public space, because people believe that men believe they're bigger than institutions, they're bigger than the laws, they're bigger than the rules, that it should not apply to them in this instance. And when you think it should not apply to you in this particular instance, you open up the floodgates.
A crisis that the police does not need, definitely. Let's look at the Daily Sun. Terrorism, why Justice Nyako can't continue my trial, can't conduct my trial, according to Kanu. A detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB Nnamdi Kanu, in a statement by his lawyer, has argued that the court proceedings wherein his trial was adjourned indefinitely by Justice Murtala Binta Nyako is a nullity. This argument is on grounds that, having recused herself from the trial, the judge doesn't have the jurisdiction to conduct the trial. Let's look at a related story on that front page as well. Iwanyangu's family reveals cause of death, says, my dad died from trekking to visit Kano in custody, according to his son. He appealed to Tinubu to grant that wish to release IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu. I mean, apart from the legalese, Charles, in this case, it's obvious that Kanu is a political prisoner, and only a political decision will set him free. I think when I think about it, it reminds me of someone like Hamza al-Mustafa, who was detained for at least 15 years. Although it's totally different circumstances, he was head of security.
Political prisoner. Your charges here of treason. And
sorry, what do you say?
Yes, I said I wouldn't agree that he's a political prisoner, because this is obviously a case that involves national security.
Yeah,
and
but there's so many
in
cases in Nigeria, such as this, where at the end of the day, the court has ruled several times that he be released. When you look at the circumstances of his arrest and all the court cases have gone through, he's been asked to be released, but the government feels that he's a threat. That's why he's still being held. And so that's why a lot of people say this will be a political decision at the end of the day. Charles, if you want to jump in here.
Who is the government in this case? Because I believe the judiciary is also part of the government, an integral part of it. So if the judiciary determines that this man is not a threat, if he were a threat, I'm very sure that would have been established in court. So the court has established that he is not a threat, release him. So who then is insisting that he remain in custody? That's the controversy that is so very unnecessary. And so many times the man has come to court and said, you have taken this decision, so why are you still keeping me in custody? I saw a video online where he was actually challenging the prosecution lawyers, particularly about Justice Binta Murtala Nyako's competence to handle his case. And he also did point out that, look, if there are no judges at the Federal High Court to try my matter satisfactorily, transfer the case to a court in the Southeast and let's get this over and done with. So somehow it appears the powers that be are making Nnamdi Kanu a hero among the Southeasterners, and that's why people can actually take laws into their hands, and because of Nnamdi Kanu, ground the economies in the Southeast for days. I mean, I simply don't understand why this has to be allowed to persist indefinitely. I think it's exhausting.
I mean, I don't know about it being a hero. It's, in the Southeast, some like him, some do not like him, because he has caused more problem actually for people in that region with all the crisis that is going on in terms of security. But
when you make someone a moral martyr,
right,
then of course he actually attains that heroism status in the minds of people. Just love the oppressed underdog.
Right. That's an argument. Okay, let's look at the Punch newspaper. 2027, Obasanjo, Atiku, others meeting, no threat, says APC. The All Progressives Congress is speaking out on the meeting between former President Olusegun Obasanjo, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, and others. The party says a possible alliance between these people, which also includes a former governor of Sokoto State, Aminu Tambuwal, former governor of Rivers, Liya Lumoke, and others, will not stop President Tinubu in 2027. Although Atiku said the meeting was a courtesy call on Obasanjo, speculations are arrived that it's not unrelated with the 2027 elections. Your thoughts on this, Chooks?
Yes, very interesting. And that's why I tell people who lay down their lives for politicians to be to think twice. Imagine an Atiku Abubakar visiting Obasanjo on a courtesy visit. This is the same Atiku Obasanjo fought tooth and nail to stop in 2027 from actually contesting the election, not just winning, from contesting the election. Atiku had to go to the Supreme Court to be able to run, to vie for elections. And then today, adversity, they say, makes strange bedfellows. Today, the same Atiku has gone to Obasanjo for whatever reason to, courtesy call it any kind of visit, But then it tells us, it speaks volume of the character of politicians in Nigeria, that they make up when it's convenient for them and they quarrel when it's not convenient for them.
Yeah.
Don't forget that in politics there are no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. It is the interests that are permanent. So if it serves Atiku's interests to visit Obasanjo, why not? And remember, he was actually insisting that the visit to Obasanjo was not political, but I mean, it's obvious. You never tell a blind man it's raining.
Well, I also think that when we're talking about interests here, we have been speaking about the PDP party and its crisis, and these are all members of the PDP here that we're seeing: Liya Lumoke, Atiku Abubakar, and former President Olusegun Obasanjo, who came, who brought the PDP into power in Nigeria.
Remember, he even taught his
Obasanjo left PDP.
card.
Yes,
left PDP.
yes. But I'm saying he's one of the founding members. So, as you said, interests sometimes shift, and you make friends again.
Let's not forget that a lot of the APC leaders were PDP alumni.
Right.
Yes.
Obasanjo was not a founding member. However, the party was formed and he was brought into the party.
Exactly.
And at the end of the day, he tore his card to pieces. He was like, I'm fed up with PDP and all of that. Anyway, let's look at other newspapers. We have The Guardian. Stronger Naira unsettles FX market amid waning dollar savings. Also, speculations mount over 2027 as Atiku Obasanjo hold closed-door meeting. Women sexually violated or killed every 10 minutes in Nigeria. 800 ex-Boko Haram fighters undergoing de-radicalization, says DHQ. On to Leadership newspaper. Analysts project 15% inflation as MPC holds February 18. Alleged terrorism, Nnamdi Kanu questions court's jurisdiction. INEC to sacked rec, prove your innocence in court. And pro-Wike Fubara camps differ over Supreme Court verdict. We also have here New Telegraph. Rivers Supreme Court dismisses Fubara's suit against 27 pro-Wike lawmakers. Mass housing, FG launches private sector driven 100 billion facility. And then we have the international headlines for you today. Citizen newspaper, where half your salary goes. Findings by a household affordability index report in South Africa says 57% of monthly earnings go to electricity and transport, with underspending on food. SA labor unions are not happy about this financial crunch faced by citizens earning minimum wage. Following the recent State of Nation address by President Cyril Ramaphosa, citizens are looking to see how these promises will translate to real changes when needed. Yolanda, apparently this discussion about high cost of living is across the world, South Africa, Nigeria as well. I think that's the thing with development. It leads to higher cost of living because as economy grows, so does the demand for goods and services, which also drives up prices, particularly for housing and other utilities. But it's something that we don't often talk about, and South Africans are talking about it now.
Yes, and thank you, Constance. You took the words right out of my mouth. Development in urban areas is a give and a take.
Yes.
Because to be able to survive in such an economy where it's on the up and up, workers are forced to move to the outskirts of the city, and often that includes longer commuting time to work, and you have to take 2 or 3 buses. And I'm not sure about the state right now in South Africa, but I don't think that there's a national railway service that can consistently chauffeur people to and fro from the outskirts of the city. So that comes with very high costs, having to take several buses. And as well, the electricity situation there has not been great. It's something we've spoken about several times, and so people are forced to improvise. I don't know if they improvise in the way Nigerians do, with the use of generators and, having to get inverters, but you cannot deny that the middle to lower income earning populace is, struggling with that, just like the rest of the world, as you said.
Okay, so the Times newspaper this morning, very interesting story. Gen Z aren't proud of Britain and wouldn't fight to save it. A revealing Time study has said that half of Generation Z think Britain is a racist country.
Yes.
And only 1 in 10 would risk their lives to defend it. From the views of 18 to 27-year-olds, there's a deep erosion of faith in the country. Just 41% are proud to be British, and only 15% believe the country is united. 50% believe the country is stuck in the past. Senior military and political figures are worried about this, saying if they are not ready for fight for their country, they can become prey in a world of predators. I mean, Yolanda, not a surprising story at all. With the history of empire, you cannot but shudder when you read about the gruesome atrocities committed by your country.
It's not just about the atrocities. I think as well, times are different. As rightly stated, the Gen Zs, it's a different time than previous generations. And Gen Zs have come with their own mandate, for lack of a better word. It's, previous generations of British people were predominantly white. Now the British populace is made up of something else,
It's more diverse.
Absolutely, it's much more diverse. And so it's harder to be loyal to, I think, I don't know. I'm not a Gen Z. But
obviously, none of us are.
I think this Gen Z phenomenon is actually across the world.
Absolutely.
I know that in the United States too, Gen Z are definitely not as patriotic as the older generations are. Gen Zs they're more globalized in their outlook, so their loyalties to their countries are not as solid as previous generations.
And they're individualistic as well.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not unique to Britain alone.
Yeah, a different time indeed. Let's move on to iNewspaper. At the top of the front page here, we have Tory MPs one Badenoch. She has a year to make gains or face being ousted. Kemi Badenoch is only 100 days into her job as Conservative leader, but already MPs are talking about putting a time limit on how long that she can stay. The party is jittery after Reform UK surged in the polls, such that Conservative MPs are discussing at which point Badenoch may be forced to either make a pact with Nigel Farage's party or step aside as a leader. Ouch.
Are you sure? Are you sure we're not taking my bet? I'm asking again. I'm positing this to you again, Dr. Constance Ikoku. Are we taking my bet that she's never ever going to be
good
Prime
at betting, so I will leave it for you. I'm not good at betting. Let's just say that. But you know, you might be right, but.
It does not seem she is popular amongst her party, amongst her party's primary demographic, amongst the opposition, amongst young people in Britain who are, as we've said, responding to the racial and geopolitical pressures that Britain is under, the economic pressures that they are under. A lot of people don't view this, but I think primarily Gen Zs and younger millennials are poorer than their parents in a way that they could never fathom. They're not homeowners in the same way.
Very true.
The cost of your job security is threatened by AI and technology. So they are. So that is part of why they, amongst other things, you know, Gen Zs have very good reasons to be dissatisfied with leadership. But particularly when it comes to Kemi Badenoch, when she's courting the right wing as a black woman, I don't think she'll see that prime minister seat. Well,
I would have told Chooks to chip in, but we're out of time. Very interesting conversation. Before we go, the Guardian Gaza ceasefire feared to be at the edge of breakdown. More crisis in the Middle East. Well, that's so much we can take this morning. Chooks Akuna, Executive Director at Authority Newspaper, thank you so much for joining us today.
And Dr. Constance Ikoku, lovely to have you on Daybreak as always. And for lovely viewers, that's all the time we have for you today on Daybreak. I am Adeyeye Giwaltage.
I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.